Can you really trust Canadian real estate influencer Nolan Matthias and the advice that he's been given on his channel for a couple of years now? Well, I know there is one thing that he's been lying to you about, and I'm going to tell you all about it right after I ask you to please subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on Canadian real estate, and make sure to click the like button to help me get this information to let other people know whether or not they can trust Nolan as well. Okay, so I'm going to get right into it. I'm not going to mess around at all, because I actually tried to get a hold of Nolan to talk to him and book him in. We were actually scheduled to do a live stream, but then when he found out that I was going to confront him about a particular thing he was lying about on his channel, he canceled on me. And instead, he flew here to Vancouver so I can confront him in person. And really, that lie that he was telling you is that we were beefing. We weren't beefing at all. This guy really does know what he's talking about, and I really appreciate him. So I hope we didn't fool too many of you out there with our fake beef. So I appreciate you coming on, man.
Thanks, man. That was fun. There were some people who took that really seriously, hey?
Your channel, or your viewers, your Nolan army, Team Nolan, as Tom Story calls it, they crushed a couple of my videos as a result of hitting that thumbs down button because we were playing.
Unreal. Well, I hear Tom did really well off of it.
Tom did extremely well off of it. Lots of subscribers to his channel. So I just wanted to have you here. I mean, it's awesome that you're here in Vancouver. I thought it would be a good opportunity for us to sit down. We were supposed to actually do this on a live stream, but you ended up coming here just to kind of put things at ease and let everybody know, no, we don't hate each other whatsoever. No. But what a great opportunity to have you on and talk a little bit about maybe what's going on out there in the mortgage world. It is what, absolute craziness right now for you guys?
I don't even know what's happening anymore. Like Vancouver market, it sounds like sales are down. Toronto market sounds like sales are down. Calgary is still booming. Like our heads just spinning every day with new interest rate stuff, and I mean, it's wild. It's really not what anybody expected a couple of years ago when Tiff Macklem was standing in front of everybody going, hey, you're going to have low interest rates for a very, very, very long time.
What did he say, 2024 or something like that at one point?
When he said that, and we could probably find the clip of this, but when he said that, the actual the fiscal report that they had released at that point in time, the monetary policy report that they had released at that point in time, they were saying end of 2023. And now we're like early 2022, and all bets are off the table, right? And that's not because they were lying. It's not because they were trying to say, hey, go ahead, borrow a bunch of money, we're going to keep rates low, and then surprise, we're going to fool you. It's because just things in economics, things happen, and you never expect it, and it's the things that you don't expect that end up having the biggest impact. I mean, economists are not fortune tellers. They're really good at predicting things in hindsight, right?
I always like for instance, I know you may not be the biggest fan of Benjamin Tell, but I think he's great. I think he does a lot of cool things. He is amazing at saying what just happened and why it happened. Mm-hmm. Anything like, here's what we're expecting in the future, like flipping coins. Yeah. Right? Literally, like, we have no idea. And what I'm seeing as a trend, maybe you can comment towards this. What I'm seeing as a trend is whatever they think is happening is happening way faster than they projected it was going to happen. Yeah. So my prediction, tell me how wrong you think I am. And you're very good. This is actually how we kind of connected recently, because you were telling me how wrong I was about a certain few things.
Yeah.
I think there's a very good chance that these rates do go crazy very quickly. Mm-hmm. And there's a very good chance then they come back just as quickly, even faster. So they say we're going to now raise rates for what? Multiple, maybe another couple of years. And there's a very good chance that they do that for 9 or 12 or 16 months and then dial it right back. Do you think that that's going to happen faster now again than they're projecting?
Yeah. I mean, so there's a couple of points I need to make just on everything you just said. First and foremost, Benjamin Tell is a phenomenal economist who I have followed since I got into the mortgage business. He is incredible. I do remember him at times in 2010 standing up in front of crowds saying interest rates are going to go up and you better be prepared, and then they didn't. And it just turns out he was about 12 years too early because he's right now. but he's a phenomenal economist, and I love seeing him speak, and I love the information he puts out. Second thing, like, I have to commend you on your channel. As funny as the fake feud was, and me calling Tom Story, you know, the #1 real estate influencer in Canada, you know, your thought process around interest rates, around the market, is actually probably one of the closest that I've actually found to how I feel and what I project in my own personal projections. And, you know, with respect to interest rates going up, yeah, I think we're going to have some short-term pain. And I think you're absolutely right. We're probably going to have interest rates come back at some point after they kind of hit that point where we've dealt with inflation. Now, that's where it gets into a really interesting conversation, because at what point does inflation turn around? And if it doesn't, is there going to be an equation of we're going to have many, many years of higher than normal inflation because we just have to, because it's not controllable at this point? And then what happens with higher interest rates and how it affects growth? Are we headed for stagflation? Potentially. Like, it's basically anybody's guess what could happen. But I do think that as it goes up, we're going to see them have to pull it back a little bit at some point, just because that's the way it works.
I agree. I think they're ratcheting it up just so they can ratchet it back down later on. But the problem that we're coming into, I mean, probably more so obviously outside of Vancouver where I am and in Toronto, is because they were low for so long, now prices have got out of control. And so now there is going to be pain, if you want to call it that. Personally, I don't see pain in the future. And the reason I don't see pain in the future is because it has nothing, I do see lower prices. The reason I don't see pain is I think the people that are getting into mortgages now, or that have got into mortgages over the last 6 months, aren't going to be in a bad spot because they now have those likely for 5 years. Right?
Yep.
And there's a very good chance that they're not going to be in a bad spot until 5 years from now. And only then, if rates are still higher and prices are still lower, will they be in trouble.
Yeah. And I mean, that's actually what scares me, is what I'm not so much concerned about the immediate future, but I am concerned about that period 5 years out, when the 5-year fixed borrowers who think that because they got in at 2% or less, they're good, they're fine, they don't have anything to worry about, well, those mortgages will adjust. And even more scary, I've talked about variable on my channel a lot, and we really never really differentiated between variable and adjustable. The adjustable rate mortgages are the ones I prefer because the payments adjust with the interest rate. The variable rate mortgages, the payments stay the same. This is, by the way, why I sometimes disagree with some of your suggestions on the big banks that you think are the best in Canada. But hey, each his own. We all have our opinions. But those are the people I'm really fearful for, because if interest rates increase and there isn't a pullback, those people are going to have payments that haven't changed, but the amount of interest that they've been paying is going up, which means the amount of principal that they've been paying has gone down. And when their payments reset, the actual effect could be even worse than what it is for a fixed rate borrower. So, you know, I think the safest borrowers from a long-term perspective are the people who have adjustable rate mortgages. Interest rates increase and their payments change, and they feel the pain gradually instead of all at once upon renewal. And the rest, you know, if interest rates go up substantially over the next 5 years, they need to be prepared.
So okay, hang on. I'm in the business, and I don't well, I'm not in the mortgage business. I'm in the real estate business. You're the first mortgage broker publicly. Well, maybe you're one of the only ones that really speaks publicly, but you're the first guy I've heard that touts the difference between those two products. And I don't know the main difference between them. Personally, I have, like, on my house, I have a Manulife one. So when the interest rate goes up, it just goes up, and I just pay more interest. And I mean, it's an awesome product. I absolutely love it. But when people think variable, are they often then getting into something when rates go up, they're just paying more? Are they that's what a variable is, as opposed to an adjustable?
Exactly.
So an adjustable, as the rates go up, your payment will also increase. So you think that those people will feel less pain because they're, let's call it the frog in the pot, where we're slowly turning up the heat as opposed to just getting shocked with it all at once.
Perfect analogy, right? And 5-year fixed borrowers, variable rate borrowers, it's immediate shock, right? versus this is adjustable rate mortgages. It's feeling it a little bit at a time. And that's probably, in hindsight, I wouldn't call it necessarily a mistake on my channel, but one of the things I regret on my channel was when I was talking about variable versus fixed. You know, I in my mind was talking to my clients, the people that show up on my front doorstep and the ones that I'm doing mortgages for, and then we make sure that they're in the right variable product, because adjustable and variable are both variable rate products, but adjustable is the one we were helping our clients choose. Well, there's a lot of people who watch my channel who said, oh yeah, I want a variable, so I'm just going to go to my TD branch or my RBC branch and I'm going to get my mortgage from there, and it's a variable, and oh, it's even better than the ones Nolan talked about because my payment stays the same.
But better because maybe lower interest rate,
yeah,
or because my payment stays the same, but they haven't been explained the upsides or downsides.
The repercussions, right? And that's the biggest risk in the mortgage market, and I think in a lot of ways in the real estate market, is the things that people don't know that they don't know.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of it.
That's why, okay, just so everybody totally understands why we started kind of the fake feud, is you blew me up because I picked, like, these are the banks where I see my clients getting the not necessarily the best mortgages, but where they were getting the deal done, they were getting the service, they were getting a product that they were happy with, but I see it from the purchase point of view.
Yeah.
I don't see the refinance. I do see penalties, but nobody listens to anybody about penalties.
No.
They never do until somebody comes along and says, oh, by the way, here's your $35,000 penalty.
Yeah. No one ever thinks about it or talks about it or acknowledges it until it hurts a lot, right? It's just like during the pandemic, like a lot of us got really fat during the pandemic, and all of a sudden we turned around. I'll never forget June 30th of last year. I'm standing there in front of my mirror with a bottle of bourbon, or not a bottle, it was a glass of bourbon, but it was full. It might as well have been a bottle. Hair down to here and belly out to here, going, what the when did that happen?
Yeah,
right? I might have to bleep out that swear word, but that's the same thing that happens with the penalties and the payments that will adjust when rates go up substantially at renewal time. Those are the things that that the consumer isn't expecting, and because they aren't expecting it, it's going to hurt real bad when they find out about it.
Right. So they've been. I'm going to analogize this again. So they've been sold the Bud Light beer commercial of everybody in bikinis having a good time at the pool, and a few years later, when it comes time to move, and it's just the wrong time, like, you know, something happened, we split up, we got another kid, or something's happening, and 4 years in, I got to move.
Yep.
They're having that mirror moment, looking at themselves, going, "Oh man, what have I done?"
Yeah, totally.
Right.
And then the worst part of that is you get that $25,000 penalty quote, and then you're like, well, I'm not paying that, so I'm sticking with the lender I'm at. And then you're porting it to a different property, and you know, bankers will always tell you, don't worry, you can port your mortgage, don't worry about the penalty. But then when you go to port it, and let's say you're buying a bigger house and you're borrowing an extra $500,000, well, now because you don't want to pay that penalty and you've got to get new money, now they can charge you whatever they want on that new money, because you don't have the option to go elsewhere because you got that $25,000 penalty. So what I always talk about is you lose your leverage by giving them the tools that they need in order to retain you. And that, in the long run, is what costs people a lot more money on their mortgages.
Yeah. So I've seen that personally with people close to me, even like not just in the professional life, but, you know, family members who have had mortgages, and they get that, like, it's got to be a bona fide sale to break the term. And then even when they did that, the penalty was so large that on the other side, they ended up they had to stick with the same bank, one of the ones that you like better than I, and they had to stick with that bank at 1 full % higher than they were currently offering, because originally they got into this product that was just looked too good to be true. And at one point, I guess it ended up being too good to be true.
Totally. And, you know, when I look at your video, the reason I found your video on Best Bank in Canada to get a mortgage is because I was doing an update to one of my previous videos, and I did the exact same video, and it showed up and your face was there. And I'm like, oh, there's Steve. And the interesting thing was, like, when I do my Best Mortgage in Canada or Best Bank in Canada to get a mortgage videos, what I look at the opportunity to save money down the road as my primary factor. That's not how the video's laid out.
Okay, so I understand you do that, but you're looking at this from a high level. How do I know that as a consumer watching this?
Yeah.
Because all I ever care about is, I mean, if someone's going to listen to you, that's great. But even after they listen to you and your channel and tell you this is the one and it should be this one, they're still going to take that rate that you gave them on that superior product. They're still going to go to TD or whoever, and they're still going to get beat. Like they're going to, whoever that institution is, for sure going to beat you. One of the ones I ranked really low beats you every single time.
Who was that?
But I know there's a certain maroon bank that beats out a lot of people after the fact. But at that point, then those people watching this still can't realize or still can't stop themselves from signing on the better interest rate.
And you know, it's interesting because for us, we've gotten really good at presenting the whole picture. And you know, we'll always present what we believe to be the best bank in Canada to get a mortgage. We'll present the discount rate. That's the one that you go online and you search for best rate in Canada and that pops up. And then we'll make a recommendation. And the recommendation is usually neither the bank or the best rate in Canada. But then we'll also have a conversation about how banks operate. And, there's a blue bank, a really blue bank out there that they'll tell every single client, here's the rate we're offering you. By the way, go find a better rate, because if you go and find a better rate elsewhere, we'll be able to get it beat by my managers. And so then they go and they engage a broker, and then the broker engages an underwriter, and then the underwriter has a docs person, and then there's an appraiser, and then there's
you do the heavy lifting for them.
Yeah, and then the client goes and takes that back to the bank, and then they beat it. And it's like, well, you engaged 9 people and wasted 9 people's time in order to get a better rate when the bank knew that they could give you a better one. So if they aren't going to give you the better rate up front, why would you continue to deal with them? Like, why would you? Yeah. They're showing you. Have you ever heard the joke of the banker that went to hell? Okay, so the banker that went to hell. I'll tell the short version of it. But there's this banker. He passes away.
All bankers, by the way. Yeah. All bankers.
All bankers. It can be brokers too. It could be realtors too. But this banker passes away, and he finds himself at the pearly gates. And St. Peter says to him, "Would you prefer to go to heaven or hell?" And the banker goes, "Well, I'm not an idiot. If you're going to let me in, I'm coming to heaven." So St. Peter says, "So be it." He finds himself in heaven, and it's beautiful. It's really nice. It's cloudy. It's kind of like what the view outside here is. Welcome to Vancouver. And a little less rain, but really nice. But after about a week, the banker's bored. He's like, it's nice. It's white. It's fluffy, but it's just not, it's not edgy enough for me. So he goes back to St. Peter and says, "Do you think I could do like a trial period in hell?" And St. Peter says, "Sure, no problem." And instantly the banker finds himself, he's at Pebble Beach Golf Course. He's got a beautiful blonde with him, Ferrari convertible. It's like the life of his dreams. And he goes, "Wow, heaven was nice, but hell's better." So 7 days later, the end of the trial period's over. He gets summoned back up to the pearly gates, and St. Peter says, "Which did you prefer? Do you want to come back to heaven, or do you want to go to hell?" And he goes, "Well, heaven was nice, but I'm not an idiot. I'll take hell every day, all day, every day." And instantaneously, the banker finds himself all of a sudden in a cavern, the devil with the pitchfork standing in front of him, ghouls and goblins and ghosts all around. And the banker goes, "What is this?" He goes, "This isn't hell." And the devil looks at him and goes, No, before you were just a prospect, now you're a client."
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, totally.
And that's the problem with the banks these days and the way they operate. At some point, one of the banks is going to figure out, ING Direct actually figured this out and then they left. And then Scotiabank bought them, and they're not ING Direct anymore. But at some point, the banks are going to figure out that if they treat the clients that they have as well, if not better than the prospects, they'll win the entire game.
And that is actually why I picked, who I picked. Because
I don't mind saying it. You picked RBC.
I picked number 1 as being BMO.
1 is BMO, okay.
The reason is nothing to do, I don't know the fine print. I don't know all of those little things that they do. The number 1 reason that I picked BMO, and I have never been a BMO client, not mortgage, nothing. Every single time that I have a client that is already a BMO customer and they go to BMO puts in the work to get the deal approved with as little headache to them, and usually also, again, at the best rate. I don't know the fine print or whatever. But every single time, that is the company that gets my client the house. And I'm not at the refinance. I'm not at the, let's call it penalty down the road, 5 years down the road. I am at the spot where the client has fallen in love with the property. And my job is to get them the property. And I feel like BMO is on that same path with me.
Yeah, totally. So interesting. Like, this could be a regional thing. Like, I think if you go to different places in the country, you have different managers of sales forces. And I think any of the big banks you could probably have in one area, one is like the standout with respect to service, and then another is not. And interestingly enough, my mom was 47 years at Bank Montreal. So all my banking is at Bank Montreal. I've banked there since I was like 4 years old. I also have banking at TD Canada Trust. Well, it's TD now, not Canada Trust. I have banking at RBC. I have banking at CIBC. I actually have my mortgage at Scotia. So I have experience with every single bank out there. And I think you're probably right. I think BMO is probably one of the better consumer-facing choices out there, and I can't disagree with that. The reason why I have banking everywhere is because when you're 18 and your mom works for a bank, the first thing you do is you go and open up a bank account at a different bank so she can't see where you're spending your money on the weekends, right? But yeah, I can't argue with the fact that BMO actually has a great product. They have two products. So they have what they call, I believe it's their smart mortgage, and then they have a normal full-featured mortgage. And they were kind of the pioneers of the discount mortgage, so the one that's ultra low rate that has some of the features stripped away. And I get why they did it. It was for market share, and they did really, really well off of that. But their full-featured mortgage, and in my video, I think I ranked Scotiabank as the number one bank and TD as the number two bank. If I really, really, really put it into perspective, I would say that BMO and TD are probably like tied for number two. And in some cases, depending on the client, and this is really what it comes down to. It comes down to every single client has different needs, and the best bank is the one that meets those needs. But if I really had to put it in perspective, I would probably say that BMO is probably number two behind Scotia.
I heard a rumor that BMO might be going broker channel. And I don't know if I'm breaking that rumor here, if anybody else knows it, but if they do, I'm going to assume that Nolan's going to start changing his tune a little bit, but that's because you're totally biased. Hey, I'm biased. I'm a realtor.
If BMO went back to the broker channel, by the way, my dad was the regional sales manager for Bank Montreal in the broker channel when they were in the broker channel leading up to, I got to think they left in about 2006. And his counterpart in BC was the regional sales manager for BMO in their broker channel. And he is the individual who actually introduced my wife and I, not to introduce us to go on a date, but he was the person who said, Nolan, this is Jen, Jen, this is Nolan. So, they've been in the broker channel before. They are huge investors in the broker channel. Let's call a spade, like all those monoline lenders that you don't like that probably have the best mortgages in Canada. All of them are funded by one of six banks, and it's the six major banks. Like all the money in Canada comes from six places. It's that simple. But I would love to see BMO come back into the broker channel, and if they did it properly, I think they could end up being the number one bank in Canada as far as I'm concerned.
You bring up those monoline lenders. The reason I've back when I got into the business, it was like everybody was Merrick's. MCAP had a big few years back, right? The problem I have right now is in my market how fast it was moving over the last 2 years. Those guys didn't stand a chance. They just didn't seem interested in doing it. Now, First National is probably different.
No, those are broker channel lenders, right? So you're dealing with a broker when you're dealing with them.
Yeah, like a monoline, whatever. All those 30 other dudes that are in there, right? Like they just didn't seem, and I don't get to talk to them. I'm not the actual guy. This is just what the brokers are telling me. They're just not fast enough, right?
Yeah.
And they do end up, most of my clients right now that are using independent brokers are right where you're recommending as well. Scotiabank, First National, sometimes TD, sometimes MCAP.
Yep. It's funny, right? Because the worst thing, this is the worst thing brokers do in the industry, bar none, is brokers will, sometimes it's the lender that screws things up, but quite often brokers will screw things up and then they'll go, it's the lender's fault. And it's like, it's the dumbest thing you can do as a broker, because what you're doing is you're saying, I recommend MCAP, and then you do something wrong that makes it take longer. And then you say, oh, that was MCAP's fault. And then you're saying, oh, and by the way, I recommended them to you. And congratulations on the next 5 years of dating that you have with MCAP until I can move you to a different lender. Like, a lot of the times, most of the speed issues can be handled by the broker up front by just having a smart process. So like our MCAP underwriter is phenomenal. She's one of the best in the business. Like if I don't have a full approval from her inside a day, I call to make sure she's okay. Yeah. Like, because I'm afraid she's in the hospital. Same thing with our First National underwriter. And then Scotiabank, as much as I love their product, I wish they were a little bit faster on the turnaround time. But they're probably faster with us than they are with other brokers because we have so much done up front. Because here's what happens for a client. Remember the days when you had a financing condition, right? A realtor would write an offer.
They are back.
They're back in BC, not in Alberta, maybe in Ontario. But you write this financing condition, and then so begins the most stressful week of that client's life because they've got this approval that they have to get. And all of a sudden, if you've got a broker who's not paying attention, he's like, I'm asking for job letters and down payment documents and all of these things. And the client's going, oh, I didn't realize I needed all this. And the stress level went from here to here for that client. Well, what we've done with our company is we've designed it so we have all that stuff up front. So as soon as the offer is written, all the realtor has to do is send us the MLS, send us the offer to purchase. We already have everything, and we're just pressing a submit button. And if we do our job right, the client doesn't realize there was ever a problem with the lender, there was ever a problem behind the scenes. Like, my job is to be the step down transformer, right? You have these big power lines that have all this energy, and they can't go directly into the house, the client's house. So you have this step down transformer that lowers the amount of energy coming out of the power lines. And that's our job as a broker, is to make it so that the amount of energy that the client feels and negative energy that they feel during that process is virtually eliminated. Yeah. And if I wish that all brokers operated that way, because if they did, the banks wouldn't stand a chance.
I got a question for you. I ask this to every mortgage broker I get in front of. And this is a real estate side of things. But when you get a transaction or an accepted offer for a client and you've got 5 days subject removal, what is the percentage of those offers coming from the client to you versus coming from their realtor to you?
Yeah, that's a quality of the realtor question.
That's totally the point of my question that I wasn't going to point out. But
the ones that are really, really good, and the realtors that do their job in the same way that we do, they almost always send it to us before the clients do. And sometimes the clients send it on top going, here, my realtor said you need this, and we already have it. Yeah. Which, by the way, is a great opportunity for the realtor.
But do you think it's 50-50? Do you think it's...
So I deal with 3 realtors now. And the 3, I used to deal with like 70. We're at the point in our business now with YouTube and with our repeat and referral clients that for me, it's 100%. Those 3 realtors that I still deal with, that's 100% of the time. Yeah. Prior to that, or for the people in my company that deal with realtors that we maybe don't know as well, I'd say it's like 3 out of 10.
Yeah. That's what I noticed. Like, obviously being, getting so many people reaching out on YouTube, most of them have a broker now in advance. And I find that it can be very, very tough because about the same amount of like some brokers are great. Other brokers don't even want me to call them. And like, you're not getting in Chandani on my team or Eric on my team. You're not getting in the car looking at properties without them if I have not spoken to your broker. And it's painful. I have people going through it right now where it's like 4 phone calls to the broker and there's just nothing. 2 emails, 2 more, like everything. There's just nothing. So I guess I'm just doing a sales pitch here to be like, make sure your team is on the same page, right? Because it may cost you the home. And Vancouver these days you might get extensions. But in most markets you don't get extensions. Now your dream home's gone.
Totally.
Right? So let's switch gears here a little bit and get back a little bit. Where do you think we're going? What do you think we're in for? Maybe you can break it down into the 3 sectors if you want to do like Calgary or Toronto or Vancouver or whatever.
Okay, so crystal balls are really fuzzy at the best time, right? Like making these predictions is hard, and I think part of the job is to make the predictions, but predicting it is almost impossible. I think Calgary is going to be interesting. So if you look at the BC and the Ontario buyers coming into Calgary right now, and it's freaking absurd how many people are applying for mortgages They say that they're buying it as a personal residence and they have no intention of living it. They're trying to buy it as a rental property with 5% down, which is stupid. Because what they don't realize is that Alberta's market is cyclical. It's based on oil prices and energy prices. And ultimately, it's not going to just follow Vancouver and Toronto's market. And at some point, there's a lot of investors that are going to be holding the bag in Alberta. And I think the next downturn in Alberta could be a lot worse than the rest of the country, and could be a lot worse than it has been in previous times. Now, how long it is before we see that? Could it be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Who knows? But it's going to be interesting to see what happens when it does. Now, other things can happen. Ceteris paribus is a term we use in economics, which means all else being equal. All else is never equal. So you try to isolate specific variables and try to predict based on that. Right now, just based on the outside of Alberta buying that's happening in Alberta, I think it's going to be an interesting market there. Vancouver and Toronto, I don't know. The Toronto numbers are like, you saw this report from this technology company. I did a video on it. I can't remember what they're called now. But looking at over a 60-day period, which wasn't 2 normal months, they looked at certain areas in Toronto that are down 30%. Mm-hmm. And then, you look at different markets. You look at like BC market, like BC's market is no longer a local market. It's not a Canadian market. It's an international market.
Yeah.
So how do international influences play on that? Anybody's guess, right? Interest rates in Canada are going to have an effect on that, but there's global influences in this economy and in this real estate market that could outweigh those interest rate influences. So I think it's hard to tell.
I definitely, we're seeing a lot of people, a lawyer, just so everybody out there that's not a realtor understands, a lawyer recently put something out that just said, hey, we're starting to see people walk away due to buyer's remorse. And let me tell you, I think, first of all, those people are silly for what we discussed earlier. But yeah, there's a lot going to come up to off. But that up was only January. Mm-hmm. That up was only like January, first week of February, and then it dropped again. So those people those values are gonna be down. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's gonna be all right. I think we should wrap this. I don't know if anybody's still watching, but if you are, make sure you hit the like button. Nolan and I don't hate each other. I didn't really slap him, and anybody that's watching his channel, hopefully you can hit the thumbs up instead of thumbs down on this video and not tank my channel again.
Follow Steve.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.